Hello tennis fans. I have a question for you all. I know most of you have your favorite in the GOAT race. But putting that aside for 1 minute, which male tennis player had the highest peak level in history? What I mean by that is at their prime, at each of their respective primes. Who was the best? Who was the number one? I know many people think it was Roger Federer in his prime years, while perhaps even more people think it was Rafa in the year 2010. And also there are those that think it was Novak, either in 2011 where he got that ridiculous 42-match win streak, or in 2015, where he completed one of the greatest seasons in tennis history. In this video, we're going to take a look at the prime years of Roger Federer. How good was he actually? Is it fair to say he was one of the best, if not the best? Is it an understatement to say that nobody has played at his level when he was in his absolute prime? Was a prime Roger unbeatable? Many would think so. To find out, we need to go back in time, back to 2003. The great Pete Sampras retired the year before, and everyone was wondering who his natural successor would be, and most importantly, if they would even come close to his level of dominance. Aside from Agassi, most of the tour back then was made up of young players in their early 20s, all with something to prove. You had Nalbandian, Federer, Safin, Roddick, Lleyton Hewitt, and of course, Roger Federer. With all that competition, no one really stood out. Every slam was won by a different person, and during that one season we had no less than 4 different world number ones. But everything was about to change in 2004. This was the year some consider as the beginning of Federer's prime. He was the current Wimbledon champion and ranked number 2 in the world behind American Andy Roddick. But he wasn't going to stay at number 2 for much longer. At the Australian Open he beat 4 of his biggest rivals, Lleyton Hewitt, Nalbandian, Federer, and Safin to win his second Grand Slam title and claim the coveted world number 1 ranking, which would not be seen again by another player for almost 5 years. In that 2004 season, Federer stood apart from every other player by a significant margin and lost only 4 matches outside of clay, where many consider he had one of the biggest opportunities to win at the French Open. For one, Rafa was not there yet, while at the end of 2003 there was a lot of competition to gain that number 1 spot. At the end of the 2004 season, Federer had almost double the points of the world number 2, who was Andy Roddick at the time. And on top of that you had the feeling that he was just in a class of his own, and playing at a completely different level. He beat Lleyton Hewitt so badly in the final of the US Open that it was one of the most one-sided Grand Slam matches ever. Federer said it was one of the most important matches of his career because it seemed to flip a switch and make him more confident and dominant on the court. In his next tournament in Bangkok he did to Roddick in the final what he did to Lleyton Hewitt. He destroyed him, demonstrating incredible dominance against the big opponent. He then went on to win the ATP Finals, dropping only 1 set, defeating Lleyton Hewitt in the final in another dominant performance. His win-loss record of the season was 74-6, carrying an impressive 17-match win streak to 2005. Federer decided to start his 2005 season in Doha and once again displayed some of the best tennis scene. Spectators and players alike were shocked at how dominant his performances were there. He won the tournament without even dropping 5 games in a single set. So now, carrying a 22-match win streak, he was a big favorite to win the Australian Open. But although being part of one of the greatest matches there had ever been to that date, he lost to Safin in an epic semi-final. Federer would take that personally and won his next 4 tournaments leading into the clay season. A clay season in which he won Hamburg and did not drop a single set on his route to semi-finals at the French Open. A semi-final which he would ultimately lose against Rafa, who was able to win the title being only 19 years old. But with the clay season now over, again it was time for Federer to demonstrate who was the best player in the world. He went on to win 33 matches in a row before losing in the final of the ATP Finals. 33 matches in a row is a considerable achievement. He won Wimbledon, Cincinnati, the US Open and Bangkok, back-to-back, on grass and hardcourt. This man was playing at another level to everyone else. It was difficult seeing him lose a single match. He had the best forehand in the world, and one of the best serves in the world, the best slice, the best footwork, and he was the most confident player out there on the tennis circuit. He was so way ahead of everyone else. It seemed he was invincible. He appeared to be a tennis god. He was making his opponents just feel helpless. You just had the feeling that he breaks the opponent's serve whenever he wants to, and once he has that break the set is almost over. It wasn't like his opponents were able to break him back. So although losing to David Nalbandian in the ATP Finals, Federer's win-loss record for the season was 81-4. That was as dominant as it gets. He was untouchable. But hold on. Now comes the 2006 season. This is Federer's most dominant season ever, and the season many consider is the highest level of tennis ever was played. "I was barely losing," he said. He himself says 2006 was his best season. After two of the most dominant seasons in tennis history in 2004 and 2005, Federer was going to be hard-pressed to raise his level yet again. But he did. And the result was one of the most stunning and successful seasons the tennis world has ever seen. A season that no one has matched since. A year after falling one set short of matching the highest winning percentage in the Open era, Federer faced the difficult task of matching his dominant season. While his winning percentage was slightly lower, he would win even more matches. He went 92-5. The most matches he would win in a season in his legendary career, and the most wins in a season by anyone since Ivan Lendl in 1982. He won a career high, 12 titles, a number that has not been matched since. He nearly reached the final of every tournament he played, only falling before the final once in 17 tournaments. He reached all 4 Grand Slam finals in a season for the first time in his career, winning 3 out of 4 for the second time. The feat put him in a class alone with Rod Laver as the only men to win 3 out of 4 slams twice. Only Federer had done it in 3 years, while Laver's were 7 years apart. Federer spent the entire year ranked number 1 in the world. 2006 was when Roger Federer well and truly established himself as the legend that he is known as today. His 2004 and 2005 seasons were fantastic, but 2006 took it to the next level. It was the best year of his career, with career highs in most categories. It was also Federer at his most dominant. In 2006, the tour well and truly became Roger Federer and everyone else. Only one person beat Federer multiple times in 2006, and that was Rafa. No one else was considered a threat to Federer in 2006. Even in 2005 and 2007, other players could push, even beat Federer, but not in 2006. After 2006, Federer was not only clearly the best player in the world, but he was now being considered one of the greatest of all time. It was his utter dominance in 2006 that firmly established Federer as one of the greatest. And despite what Rafa and Novak have accomplished since, neither has matched Federer's 2006 season. Statistically, they have not managed to match it. They have also never had the air of invincibility that Federer had in 2006. And even if they did eventually match it, they would already have 2006 as a precedent, whereas there had been nothing like Federer's 2006 season in 30 years. To many, Roger Federer is the greatest of all time. His dominance and skill has never been matched, and it could be a long time before anyone rules over tennis the way Roger Federer did in 2006. His 2006 season was so spectacular that, in today's game with a deep tour and all sorts of different surfaces and specialists, it is hard to see anyone managing what the Swiss legend accomplished that year. 2007 was another dominant season for the Swiss tennis star. He was almost invincible on grass. Federer was on a 48-match grass court winning streak going into the 2007 grass court season, and it would eventually extend to 65. He was actually almost invincible at every major outside of Roland Garros. Going into the 2007 grass court season, he had won 9 of the last 10 majors away from Paris. The Swiss won the Australian Open without dropping a set. He reached the final of the French Open for a second straight year but was beaten by Rafa. However, Federer gained his revenge by beating the Spaniard in an epic Wimbledon final that lasted 3 hours and 45 minutes. The then world number 1 captured his 4th successive US Open title by beating Novak Djokovic in the final. Federer also won 2 Masters 1000 titles in 2007 at Cincinnati and Hamburg. He beat Rafa in the final in the German city, thus registering his first win over the Spaniard on clay. He finished the 2007 season with 68 wins out of 77 matches. That's a win percentage of 88.3%. The Swiss maestro took home a total of 8 titles. But then came the 2008 season, the year that first poked holes in Roger Federer's aura of invincibility. It was November 2007 when Roger Federer clinched the year-end Masters Cup after defeating Rafa in the semi-final and David Ferrer in the final. He also finished 3 exhibition matches against his idol Pete Sampras around the same time, and he looked invincible. It was almost like he was on autopilot, bashing those backhand and forehand winners at will. At the start of 2008, it seemed possible that Federer would become the first player to win a calendar Grand Slam and Olympic gold in the same year. But what happened in the months to follow was like a horror movie for Federer and his fans. Federer failed to reach his first major final since 2005, losing in the Australian Open semi-final to Novak. Later he was annihilated in the French Open final by Rafa, after which he lost a heartbreaking 5-setter in the Wimbledon final. Let's take a look at what went wrong for Federer during the 2008 season. 1. Failing to close sets. Federer started the 2008 Australian Open splendidly, losing only 3 games in the first and second rounds. But his vulnerability was exposed in the third round by Janko Tipsarevic, who pushed him to 5 sets and almost caused an upset. Federer eventually prevailed, winning the match after 4 hours and 27 minutes. But it needn't have been that long. Federer had a chance to close the first set when he was serving at 5-3, but Tipsarevic broke back and won the set 7-6. Another instance when Federer was serving for the first set at 5-3 was against Novak in the Australian Open semi-final. But there too Federer failed to close on his serve and ended up losing the set and the match. Another instance when Federer failed to close the set was against Rafa in the 2008 Hamburg final. Federer led 5-2 in both the first and second sets, but couldn't close the deal and ended up losing 7-5, 6-7, 6-3. Lastly, Federer led 4-2 in the second set of the 2008 Wimbledon final only to squander the break of serve and lose it 6-4, 2. Unforced errors. As the season progressed, unforced errors started to creep into Federer's game, which turned out to be a boon for his opponents. In the 2008 French Open final, Federer committed 47 errors, compared to Rafa's 14. At Wimbledon it was a similar story, as Federer made 66 unforced errors compared to Rafa's 41. 3. Losing to lower-ranked opponents. Marty Fish, Radek Stepanek, Giles Simon, Ivo Karlovic, and James Blake registered their maiden wins against Roger Federer in 2008. Losing to lower-ranked players dented Federer's confidence and eventually led to Rafa becoming the world #1 in August 2008, thus ending Federer's reign, which had lasted for 237 weeks. 4. Federer was ill with mononucleosis at start of the season. Federer's then-agent Tony Godsick revealed that Federer was diagnosed with mononucleosis at the beginning of 2008, which hampered his fitness and training regimen. As a result, Federer couldn't bring his best game to the court in the early parts of the 2008 season. This was the time when Federer also lost to Andy Murray in 3 sets at Dubai. But there was light at the end of the tunnel. Despite the hardships, Federer still managed to salvage his season by winning his 5th consecutive US Open, beating Andy Murray in straight sets in the final. It was a reality check and a hard year for Federer, as he ended the year as world #2. He also couldn't make it to the knockout stages of the Masters Cup in Shanghai, leading to questions about his future in the game. Despite not gaining the peak prime of his earlier years, I'm not saying that Federer was no longer competitive, but I think it is universally agreed that 2007 was the end of his absolute prime years. By the way, I am aware that his form returned to another height in 2017. But whether it was as good as his prime is up for debate. That prime version of Federer that looked absolutely untouchable and is way superior to everybody else. His record between 2004 and 2007 was of 315 wins to 24 losses, winning 11 Grand Slam titles, dominating the tour with the most elegant and fascinating style we've ever seen. A style that captivated fans all over the world and made Federer one of the biggest and most loved athletes in the world. A prime level that was probably the best we have ever seen or likely to see. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know your thoughts on whether you agree a prime Roger Federer got the highest peak level in tennis history. Comment down below, leave a like, it really helps, and subscribe to the channel to enjoy more videos like this. Take care and see you again soon.